So now we're going to look at the validation of input data. And I'm just going to show you some examples of how you can work this. So if we look here at the car type field, when I click there, I get this message. I get options to select something, and the user selects something. If the user doesn't select something which is in the window, so say for example that they try to type in something, they're going to get a message which tells them they've done an error and they can either cancel or retry. Okay, so we'll retry, and when they select something which is acceptable, then the system will allow them to continue on. So in other words, validating the data makes sure that they put in information which is usable and which is reasonable. So how do you achieve that? Well, I'm going to just demonstrate it down here. So let's pretend that the car type is going to be input here. So how do I validate that? Well, what I do is I go into data, then I go to data validation. And here we've got the options for data validation. So if you look at the criteria which are allowed, you've got various options. So for example, you can specify that it should be a whole number, a decimal number, a list of items, which is what we're going to select now in a moment, a date of time, a particular length of text. Now that could be very useful, for example, in a customer name field or an address field where you might want to limit the amount of text that the person can put into a number of characters, say 30 characters. You've got custom options, but we're not going to deal with that. Let's look at the list option here for the car type. So if I select list, I now get the option to put in the source of the list. Now, for all intents and purposes, you're going to type in the list of items which are going to be used, but you could use an external source to do this validation. Here we're going to say that we've got three types. We've got basic, and then you separate that with a comma. I can't actually remember what they are, but let's have a look. Say intermediate and advanced. Okay, so there are the three things I'm going to allow the customer to put in. So you can see that you separate each one by a comma, and that gives you the list. Then over here you've got the input message. So what message will appear when the person clicks on the particular cell that they're going to put the information into. I just call it car type, and then you can put a message on that if you wish. And that will appear on the cell when the person clicks onto it. Then the third thing that you can do is that you can put an error alert into it. Now you can either stop the person enter the information, which is the default and the one that would be used normally. You can warn them, or you can just give them some information and let them continue. But mostly you're going to want the data to be as valid as possible. So you'll stop the user putting bad information in. And you give it some title and an error message. Please select the valid car type. You press OK, and let's see what the effect of that is. Well, the first thing is that you'll notice that a message comes up, please select the valid car type. You've got a drop-down menu on the cell. Then you have the options which you put into the list here, so you can select one of them. If the user doesn't select one of them and tries to put something else in, you now get the error message saying, please select the valid car type. Retry, cancel, or help. So we can cancel it or we can retry it, and then we can select the correct one. So we say basic type. So that's basic validation. There's very little to it, but it's very important because unless you validate the data as much as possible, you're going to get bad data being put in by users, and that if you get bad data in, you're going to get bad data out over here at the calculated data side. Just to show you one more example of validation, just in case you don't quite get it yet. If I, for example, was trying to get the age of a person, and what I wanted to do was limit their age to whole numbers only. So I can go to data validation, and I can say, what's the settings? Well, I won't allow any value. I'll allow a whole number, and because, for example, in the case of a car insurance company, the age would have to be between, say, 18 and whatever, 65. Let's say that for the sake of argument. So I can say between minimum of 18, so you must be 18, at least 18 to get car insurance, and a maximum of 65. After that, you need to get health checks. So let's assume that was the case. So there's another way of validating data. And again, the input message. Enter an age between 18 and 65, and an error. Press OK, and now you notice that we have the message coming up on this cell. And if I try to put in, say for example 2, press enter, I get an error message. I'll retry, and I put in 24, and it accepts 24. So that's basic validation. When you're setting up a spreadsheet during the test, you'll be asked to have input data. As far as possible, you must validate that information. That's very important. You won't get very many marks for just putting in the names of the fields that you're going to take the information into. You've got to validate the information.